Hey, Dave.
Hey, summer's around the corner, man.
Man, I'm telling you what, it's already starting to heat up here in the Phoenix area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know throughout the country, there are probably still some places getting snow, but we are definitely turned the corner, and
Yeah.
it's going to be. I think next week they said it's going to be up close to 100, if not 100.
Yeah, here in Arizona, we're in Phoenix anywhere. Up north, it's still going to be probably in the 60s and 70s for the next month or so.
Oh yeah,
Maybe get it gravitating into the 80s up in Sedona and Flagstaff. But down here in the valley, man, this is like Death Valley sometimes.
yeah. It's hot and dry most of the time. I know last year we had a little bit of humidity, but you know, how does it affect cars, Glenn?
Well, heat affects almost anything, not just vehicles. It affects people, it affects your home, it affects everything basically that is exposed to the heat, the sunlight, the whatever. So we're going to give you some tips today and talk about some, preventative things that you need to do to get your car prepared for the summer.
Well, in the extreme heat does affect cars, but also the extreme cold. We don't have that in Phoenix, thank God, because I'm not a cold weather person, but it definitely, when it gets super hot or super cold, it affects your car. Like, for instance, Glenn, batteries. They don't like it either way. And
Right.
if they're
Super
going to
cold
die,
to super hot.
yep,
Batteries, yeah.
they're going to die if they're weak, they're going to die when it gets super hot or gets super cold. That's when you're going to have the biggest problem.
So in your experience, Dave, as 50 years in the business, what is the average life of the battery? How should people be looking at their battery and saying, there's a date on it. Most companies put a sticker on there and it shows when the battery was made.
Yeah, and out here, batteries last 2.5, 3 years. That's what they last. It's just the Phoenix. It's so
And
hot
that's
here.
if you buy a good one, right?
And
You
it's
buy
if
a
you buy-
cheap battery,
yeah.
you buy the cheapest thing
year
on
and
the
a half,
shelf.
probably a year and a half.
Yeah, year and a half, and
But
they're
but
done.
but one of the things that we do, and I know you got the same tool, Glenn, is we have a checker. Whenever you bring your car in for service, like an oil change, we test the battery. We test the state of health of that battery.
Exactly. And we do what we call a load test. And so
Yeah.
the load test, how much voltage is the battery supposed to have with no load on it? And then we have the machine that puts a load on the battery. And when the voltage drops, we know if it stays within a threshold of 9.6 or higher, the battery is still in a great state of health. If it drops below 9, it's time to start looking for a new battery probably in the next couple of weeks or sometimes immediately if it drops way below into the 8s or 7s or 6s.
So when we first got this tool, my techs were like really skeptical that this thing really does it work or does it not work. Well, one of the techs had his wife's car in the shop, so he tested it and it said the battery was getting weak. But he said, let's just see what happens. Well, 2 weeks later, she was stranded. So we haven't seen him since, but but no, it does work, and it's amazing how that tester and the electronics in it really does work, and it does give us an idea of how much longer that battery is really going to last.
Right. So one thing I'll give you a quick tip for all of you who are going to be shopping for a battery sooner or later. AC Delco has a great battery, and they have a battery certificate where you pay whatever the shop charges you. Ours are $20. They can range from $10 to $20, but it will lifetime warranty that battery. So when that battery goes bad, you can go with your certificate and get a free battery for as long as you own the vehicle. It's not transferable, but if you own that vehicle, so you pay for a battery once. So buying a cheap battery, let's say at Walmart or Costco or whatever, those aren't lifetime warranty. They're usually 2 years, maybe 3 years. And after that, once that battery's gone, so is your money, and you'll be paying for another one.
Right, and let's talk about tires. Out here, the date code on that tire is so important because what happens out here with the dry, hot weather that we have, the tire tends to rot out. Let's say you're not a heavy driver, you don't put a lot of miles on your car in a year, and in 5 years down the road, you really better take a good look at those tires because what happens is they start to dry crack. And when they dry crack, that tire becomes really unreliable.
Down the middle of the tread is where you want to look, and even on the sidewalls.
Yeah.
And every tire build is different. Every company makes their tires a little bit differently. They're black and round, but that doesn't mean they're all built the same. So when you do buy tires, first of all, that date thing is there's like an oval long, maybe
Right
an
after
inch and a half long, and it has a date code on there.
It's
So
right
it
after
says,
the DOT number.
Yeah, so it says DOT, and then in that little oval, there's a date, and it's like if it's 0216, that means it was made in the second week of 2016.
Right, it goes by week. It doesn't go by month. It goes by week. So if it could say 50 2016 or 5016, and that means it's the 50th month,
week,
50th week of 2016. So.
Right.
Yeah, definitely keep an eye on that. And there again, we can always help you with that. If you go to a reputable shop that is really looking out for your best interest and wanting to make sure that your car's in good shape, every time you bring your car in for a service, I know, Glenn, you guys do this too. We do a 60-point vehicle inspection, a digital vehicle inspection. We send you the report with pictures and give you a good idea of where your car is. And especially right now, it's so important because the last thing you want to do is be driving this car down the road and have something go wrong, because you can have a $500 problem turn into a $5,000 problem really fast.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. You're driving down the freeway and you see pieces of tire laying all over the road. What do you think happened there? I mean, someone's tire exploded and came apart. So
Yeah.
why did that happen? Because either they didn't go to a shop that checked them, or they're not checking their own tires. Who does? I mean, audience, let's be honest with ourselves, right? How many people go out and walk around your car every day and look to see if your tires are wearing out, or if you got, and the problem with front tires oftentimes is you may have steel cords coming out of the tires. They're steel belted tires, so they literally have layers of steel that's in the tire. And the inside, where you can't see unless you crouch down and look, or you
Yeah.
turn the steering wheel and look, you don't see that. Your tires could look like $1,000,000 on the outside, but you go from the center towards the inside of the tire, towards the engine compartment, and those tires may be totally shot, or they're wearing out very abnormally and disproportionately.
Right. And in Arizona, we don't get a lot of wet weather, a lot of snow, but up north, they get a lot of that. And you want to make sure you have good tread, because the last thing you want to do is slipping and sliding down the road.
Right, and imagine, when you're here in the valley and you've got, the pavement, the asphalt is over 400 degrees, you could cook your breakfast on it, right? Your tires are being exposed to that.
Yeah.
And, and other places in the country, you got potholes, pothole Pete's, on top of it, checking out the potholes and filling them in or not.
Yeah.
And those take a big
There's a lot of potholes, that's for
There's
sure.
a lot of wear issues on tires, because when it hits a chuck hole in the road, the edge of that chuck hole is hitting your tire and bruising it, damaging it. It can cause, things to happen, like you get air pockets inside the tire and it's not round anymore.
Well, and struts and shocks are so important because its job is to keep that tire on the road. Make sure that tire is making good contact with the road. And you want to make sure that those are in good shape too, because if they're not, that could cause you some issues with keeping that tire on the road.
Right. In most cases, the strut manufacturers, tell you, and it's best practices to have your struts changed about every 70,000 miles. Some may last longer, depends on where and how you drive, but the average driver and the average kind of driving that gets done, 70,000 miles is a pretty good rule of thumb to have those things checked out. And we can do bounce tests. We can look for leaks and stuff like that and make sure that those shocks
Well, and
are in good shape.
you mentioned about the potholes, and the thing of it is, every time you hit those potholes, those struts and shocks are getting the crap beat out of them. And
Real quickly on the subject of tires, a number of years ago, Ford had a problem with their Explorers having the rear tires explode on them because of, some issue
tire
with
pressure.
problems and, weight distribution, things like that. And, dozens of people actually lost their lives in those crashes. And Olivia, a friend of ours, just pointed out that she saw an article in the paper that 5 people were just killed in a crash because a tire blew out. So, why is it important to check your tires? And I can't believe how many people come in here and their tires are literally bald or have steel coming out of them and say, no, do everything else, but don't do the tires.
Yeah, that's
I'll
crazy.
I'll get them somewhere else. Well, somewhere else, maybe they're holding their breath and hoping they can hold on for another couple of weeks, and then boom, the tire blows out and something terrible happens. And it's not just the tire that's going to blow out. When that tire comes apart, it takes out your inner fender liner. It'll hit the side of your fender. It can break your headlights. It can fly off and hit somebody else, make them swerve, cause them to have an accident. Or you could have an accident yourself because now you've lost control of your car, especially if a rear tire blows. You blow a front tire, you still can steer with one tire and get over to safety in most cases. If you blow a rear tire and that car starts to spin around, you're done. You're going to have a serious accident. So it's really important. We're not doing this to sell you tires. I mean, Dave and I aren't here having a tire sale. What we're doing is we're trying to help you to understand the importance of doing certain things to your vehicle. Whether you're coming to our shop or not, it doesn't make the things any less important to look at.
No, and it does not. And if you've been driving your car for a while and you all of a sudden notice a little vibration, a little bit of a pulling on the steering wheel, one direction or the other, that's the time to really get that checked out to make sure that you don't have a problem that could give you a blowout or have a incident like Glenn was just mentioning, you definitely don't want to get yourself into that position. And, with the freeways and everybody's driving on the freeways at, 70, 80 miles an hour, you definitely don't want to put yourself in that position or any kind of risk like that. But Glenn, what about cooling system? What about that? I mean, these cars right now, when it get in there again, we're talking Phoenix where we live, but really, whether you live in Phoenix or you live up north where it's cold, your cooling system really needs to be in tip-top shape.
Absolutely. And technology in radiators has changed. The tubes assemblies used to go, vertically on radiators. They were made out of copper and brass and all kinds of things back in the day, right?
Plastic now.
So now they decided, and they had brass tanks and they were heavy duty. You could smash them with a hammer and couldn't damage them. Nowadays, the thickness of the core of that radiator has been reduced by about 50 to 75%. You got a very thin, maybe 3/4 of an inch tube assembly running horizontally in front of the vehicle. Some are slightly thicker, but the average 4-cylinder or 6-cylinder vehicle has aluminum, which displaces heat a lot better, which is good. And they're cooled by electric fans, which pull air from the front of the vehicle towards the engine, and they displace that heat that's in the radiator and keep the cooling cool to keep your engine from overheating. But what happens if one of those two fan assemblies fails, or even if it only has one fan assembly, that fan isn't functioning properly? So all of those functionalities should be checked out.
Well, and that's you hit on something. Look at the radiators. The tanks are made out of plastic, and just take anything plastic and leave it out in the sun for a whole summer and see how brittle it gets. You really got to check that. And when it starts to get discolored on the tank and it starts to get the heat starts to make it a little more brittle,
absolutely,
then it's time to replace that radiator, because the last thing in the world you want to do is be driving down the freeway and that tank splits open. You 9 times out of 10 don't have enough time to pull over, shut the car off before you've done some serious damage. And that's the thing that we try to let our clients know, that we don't want them to turn a $500 problem into a $5,000 problem.
Right. And if, for instance, you're going down the road and you have a hot cold gauge in your dash, and you're used to it being at center or just slightly under center, and you start noticing that it's going up over the half to 3/4, there's something wrong with that cooling system. Either the pump isn't working right, your fans aren't working right, your system is getting clogged up because it hasn't been serviced. And boy, you start overheating an engine little by little.
Yeah.
Next thing you know,
they don't take it like the
you
old
need
cars.
a head gasket. All these engines are made of aluminum. They
Right.
have aluminum blocks, aluminum heads. Aluminum, because it's very heat sensitive, it displaces heat good in a radiator, but it doesn't in an engine.
Well, and they used to be made out of cast iron. They were a lot tougher. But like you said, the aluminum, it warps, it cracks, and it causes a lot of bigger problems. But so the cooling system really is what cools off the engine. But more importantly, what cools off you?
The air conditioning system.
Yeah, that's right. And they're two separate systems. And a lot of times people think that it's one system. They come in and say, hey, can you put some fluid in my air conditioning? Pour some fluid in my air conditioning. Well, it doesn't work that way. Freon is a total different chemical.
Right.
It's not a liquid.
It's a compressed gas.
Compressed gas.
And when it gets compressed, it gets cold. But when it goes through the compressor, it gets superheated. Then it has to go through a condenser in the front of the engine, and then it goes through a valving system, which makes it get cold again by the time it hits the ducts in your vehicle.
Right, and that's super important, because at 110, you don't want to be sweating.
Right, and then you've got all kinds of control systems. Not only the one in your dash that turns it off and on and controls the amount of cold or heat that you want coming through your ducts, but there's control systems on the compressor itself. Some are now multi-stage compressors, so they're trying to get fuel efficiency. So this compressor is not going hot and heavy all the time.
Right.
Only when it's called upon to do it. So it spins at different revolutions per minute internally in the compressor.
Right, and then you got the heater. We don't really need the heat so much. Maybe there's a few days, maybe a couple weeks out of the year that we end up turning their heaters on. We don't turn them on that often, but like up north, they use them all the time. And you got to make sure that the heating system is working good, because that's really important, especially in the wintertime, because you don't want to be freezing. If you get stranded somewhere, you want to make sure that you can still use your heat if the engine's still running, obviously. But belts and hoses, another thing.
Belts and hoses are another.
They're made out of rubber, right?
Made out of rubber. And, over a period of time, the belts start cracking. Next thing you know, it flies off, and whatever components, and most vehicles now only have one belt. So when that belt breaks, you lose your fan, you lose your AC, you
Power
lose your water
steering.
pump, power steering.
Yeah.
Anything that it's connected to is going to stop working, which means you can immediately flash over and start overheating that motor. Your brake light's going to come on, your heat light's going to come on, your electrical light's going to come on. It's going to say your charging system
Yeah.
light's going to come on, because none of those components are spinning anymore.
Yeah. So what other things, Glenn, should people be worried about this time of year, and especially in Phoenix when it's so hot?
Well, you know, in the event that something should happen to your vehicle and you have to pull over, you need to have water in your car. You need to have some kind of way of keeping yourself protected, because
Yep.
when it's 116, it's going to be 200 degrees in your car like nothing flat. And if you have to stand out and wait for a tow truck or anything else like that, and you've got nothing to protect yourself, that's really important to make sure you have those things inside of your, some snacks and some water and some stuff like that. It's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, I guess the most important thing that I want to say about the hot weather coming up is get your car checked out early, get it checked out, more often, to make sure your car is really in tip-top shape to make it through that hot, treacherous summer. And if you're going to go on a road trip, don't just jump in your car and think you're going to go on a road trip. Get the car looked over before you go to make sure that you don't have anything that could leave you stranded or give you problems. Last thing in the world you want to do, especially on a vacation, is have to deal with your broken down car or a problem with your car.
Right. Another thing that's really important, too, is windshield wiper blades. Man, I can't tell you how many customers' vehicles come in here, and that's one of our parts of our inspection. We check to see if the windshield wiper washers are working and how well the windshield wipers are wiping. And so what are some of the signs of bad wiper blades, Dave?
Well, they start to crack, or when you turn them on, they don't wipe as well. Maybe make a groaning noise that isn't real pleasant. But you nailed it, Glenn. Visibility is huge. I mean, you never know when you're going to get yourself in a situation where visibility might be a little tougher. And so you want to make sure that those wiper blades, and it's such a simple thing, Glenn, and people just kind of overlook it until that day comes when the rain, and out here it's really rougher because we don't get a lot of rain, but we get a lot of hot days, and then all of a sudden we get a rain. Well, those hot days just cook those wiper blades. And now when you go to turn them on, they just don't wipe worth a crap, and you're in the middle of a rainstorm.
Yeah, actually, the more wiper blades are used, the longer they last. The longer they sit in the hot sun, like Dave said, they just dry out. Then you go to turn them on one day, and all of a sudden there's a tear, and then the next thing you know, the whole blade, the outer part of the blade that wipes your window clean is gone.
And like you had said earlier about tires and batteries, you want to buy a good quality wiper blade too. Don't buy the cheapest thing you can find. They just seem to last a little better. They wipe a little bit better. And all around, you just want to get yourself a decent wiper blade, because visibility is so important.
Absolutely. So, some great blades that are out there made by Bosch and Goodyear and stuff like that, which have a really good quality rubber blade on them, and they'll last you a lot longer, and they'll keep your windshield cleaner, and visibility will be improved.
Right. And like I mentioned, if you're getting your car serviced, your oil change, get it to a shop where they have the ability to look over the whole car for you. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, seek out a good shop. Get online and say, great auto repair near me, and look at their reviews and everything, and if it looks like the kind of shop you want to go to, and check out, making your car an experimental rat by taking it somewhere different to the next cheapest oil change is not going to help you to have a long-lasting car. And it's going to cost you a heck of a lot more money if you're bouncing from place to place to place, because no one's got any records of what was done previous on the vehicle.
Yeah, you can overservice it. You can overservice the vehicle. And then the thing of it is if you go to either Glenn or my shop, we have everything on a computer. So the thing of it is, if you go to sell that car down the road or whatever, we can print up all the history of what we've done to it. And that way it might just help you get a little bit more money for the vehicle when you do go to sell it. And then the new owner can see what has been done. So, yeah,
exactly.
Overall, you just want to make sure that you go to a reputable place, get your car looked over, make sure that your car is safe to be on the road, and that you don't want to get stranded, that's for sure.
Okay, and we hope for all of you who are listening out there that you have a happy and a great, safe summer, and spend time with your kids, your family, take them to fun places and everything, and enjoy life. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. I hope you people out there in podcast land got something out of this. And if you like this podcast, you can press like or subscribe.